if you get upset, don't stir him up. We have this saying down south: if you don't want my peaches, don't shake my tree. But
I thought that was about something else.
oh, it probably is, and I'm just naively. Are we rolling here?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
I just thought it was too good to miss. I just switched it on 10 seconds ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
Hmm.
the end of that story is, yeah, you have one, but whether it's self-sustaining, you can hire ringers for anything. You can have what you want, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
But your old college had a tradition. Yeah.
Oh, even Florida State
Yeah.
had a pretty good symphony, and it had a tradition.
Yeah.
And anytime you went into theory class or sight singing or anything like that, it was about that tradition. And if everybody is not sort of bent toward that canon or that tradition, then you don't have that culture in your college. So it's very hard. It's very hard to develop a culture. Berkeley has a culture. It's not the same culture. It's a viable and useful culture musically. It was started in jazz, but it's certainly way beyond that now. We have all kinds of endeavors. But it started in an iconoclast sort of way. We're not going to be part of the canon. We're not going to require you to learn Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. Most colleges across the U.S. are in the conservatory model. There for a while, Berkeley put out a logo, nothing conservatory about us. And I thought, again, it's like, this is really very childish. It's like a slap at 400 colleges across the U.S. A lot of hubris on our part. We have abandoned it now with the new president, I must say. But I said, yes, this is a conservatory. It just has a 100-year-old tradition, not a 500-year-old tradition. It had the jazz canon, certainly, as its genesis. As a matter of fact, Berkeley was a Schillinger house, Joseph Schillinger, who wrote these very involved books about analyzing music and turning things into numbers and using that sort of an approach. Some people would think rather mechanistic. I happen to believe that almost all artistic endeavors are at their root rather mechanistic. The creative part is indeed the part we don't quite understand, but understanding how to mix tempera paints or, what happens when you do certain pastels on top of each other is quite viable, and how harmonies work is quite viable for anybody to learn. Whether or not they will then do something that has deep emotional resonance and is considered, beautiful and things like that is subject to question. But creativity itself, I have a pedestrian view. It's like you get your hands into it and you manipulate the materials. And if ideas don't come out and start manifesting themselves, then you're probably not very creative, which is okay. Not everybody is. I mean, when I was a performer, I knew a lot of performers that they were not very creative. They were damn good performers, maybe, but they couldn't have written any music if they had to. I sort of realized, I'd like to know more about music. I don't know how it's put together. I can play it because it's in front of me and it demands to be done such a way, So I started looking at music in that way. And of course I discovered Schillinger and a number of other people. And we never mentioned the word now. I don't know what happened. I mean, there may have been dues that weren't paid or something. We eventually stopped that name and became first a school of music and then a college. But it's very interesting because some of these issues raise the question of, well, what is creativity? What is it to be creative? And C.P. Snow, of course, wrote The Two Cultures, the split between art and science, and lamented the idea maybe that they couldn't be bridged. I think electronic music, as a matter of fact, is interesting, at least in some dimension, because as a practitioner of it, you can sort of choose which side you'd like to emphasize. You can be highly intuitive. You can use other people's sounds, and you can use pedestrian sort of tools, but do something quite creative. Or possibly you could be much more rigorous or didactic, and be more theoretically based, and you'll also come up with something that's probably useful, beautiful. So I like the idea that with electroacoustic music, the entry card is not virtuosity. With standard music, and I've played with two orchestras, the entry card is virtuosity. End of story. If you can't play the second trumpet part to Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony, you cannot sit in that chair right there. That's second trumpet for the symphony. End of story. Can't be done. So in a way, electroacoustic music has tremendously democratized possibility of making music, and electronic media do that. It's always a two-edged sword, of course. Whenever you democratize something, I wouldn't say you debase it, you attenuate it. More people are doing it, so probably the average product is not as good as it would have been just a few select people that are in the know, cognoscenti, literati, whatever you want to call it. This is just organic to me. It's not even worth arguing about it. Well, of course, if you try to make your software all things for all people, it probably won't be a very sharp point, as it would be if it were designed specifically with a few talented professionals in mind. Garage band versus, something that's a little more sophisticated than that. But one of my students just did something the other day in that piece of software, and it was really quite good, which you don't hear that often. Because generally, people who are attracted to easy things don't do sophisticated things. It's almost like a mathematical formula. It's like, yeah, well, it's not going to work that way. Occasionally, an anomaly occurs, and you get something really artistic and fruitful and beautiful out of something rather mundane.